There are two more things though to discuss in here. First of all, I see on the docket there's mention of the Switch to C button. And we have Oliver here with the hot scoop on that. So Oliver, tell us all about the Switch to C button.
Yeah, well, I regret to say there's not a whole lot I can tell you about the Switch 2C button. Um, Basically, this leaked in some imagery that was published in the Nintendo Today app, which I think we'll talk about in a moment potentially. But yeah, there is a C icon on that kind of blank-faced button that we saw in the earlier Switch 2 renderings, where Nintendo did not want to inform you of the iconography on that button, and now they have. But I'm very curious to see what this will be used for, because like the N64 had 4C buttons, the GameCube had a C stick. I think the Wii also had a C button on the triggers, if I'm not mistaken, something like that. But I'm really curious to see what the C stands for, if it's like camera or cursor is one possibility I've seen floated that would potentially tie into mouse functionality with the Switch. You still have the capture button on the left-hand Joy-Con, so presumably it's not being used for that purpose there. But the fact that Nintendo has put so much effort into keeping this under wraps, presumably the plan was to keep it under wraps until the April 2nd Switch 2 Direct event here, suggests that it's probably something fairly important. And I would think that it's probably something to do with some key toggle the system has, and not something that is just like usable by developers to map like your punch button onto. I think the placement suggests something very much of a toggle kind of nature there.
It's like a system level function for sure. They wouldn't put it there otherwise, right? So it's probably not a copy button because I don't see a paste button. But I am curious what they're going to do with that. And yeah, very, very interesting. We haven't seen C buttons since, I guess it was like GameCube, if I recall.
Yeah, you had a C stick on the GameCube.
C stick. N64 had the C buttons, and back then C stood for camera. Presumably this does not stand for camera, because I don't believe there is a camera on board on the Switch 2 anyway, and we already have a right stick, so I don't know. Very, very strange thing, but thanks for that update, Oliver. We know more about it. But you mentioned another keyword. The Nintendo Today app was announced at the end of the Direct.
Yeah.
And I believe you spent a little bit of time with it. And I guess the question everyone has is, you played with Nintendo today, but will you be doing it tomorrow?
That's a good question. Well, it really depends on the kinds of content they have for me. But anyways, I have the little Nintendo Today app open here. And it's kind of an interesting part of the Switch marketing cycle, I guess you could say. It seems like a way to kind of drip feed players information about Switch titles. And it's actually kind of, I don't know, I kind of find it kind of charming. Like you boot it up and you basically get to pick your theme. So you get to pick between like Zelda or Mario or Animal Crossing or Splatoon or Pikmin, which is interesting. No Metroid theme, which is what I might have gone with, but I went with the Legend of Zelda theme. And it kind of themes your app with iconography, app icons, graphics, stuff like this that matches that selection. And there's like a countdown for the Switch 2 Direct, which you can see there. I think it's a pretty kind of cool way to update people on Switch 2 game information and kind of, I don't know, put players in more of a continuous mode of like expecting updates and upgrades and things like that, which is kind of more in line with like modern game conventions where old games get patched all the time, or you have like live service titles and continuous update practices and things like that. So I think it's kind of a cool little app. But if I have a complaint, at the moment, it really does seem to focus on video content. Like you click any of these links here and it opens up into like a trailer or like a snippet of an orchestral piece or something like that. It's not really something that is like integrated with like a news feed. Like the PlayStation blog is maybe a good counterexample where it's basically focused on text and there is a video component. Here it seems focused on video component, and maybe in the future there will be a text component. I would prefer it if like each time you clicked on a link, it came up with a little article, a little summary, a little bit of PR, and then there was also a video, so I could evaluate whether I'm interested in watching the video. You know, just a little quibble there. Also, the video quality is kind of low, but in classic Nintendo fashion, we're always struck by the generally low quality of the video they serve over YouTube with their 1080p 60 encodes there. Hopefully that will change for Switch 2. this direct had quite poor footage quality, although we did manage to snag a
Yep.
few copies of higher quality versions of certain trailers from Nintendo servers, which is certainly helpful. But yeah, I think this app is cool. I'm interested to see how it evolves. For now, though, it's very much like a work in progress. They need to kind of push out more content and do more interesting things with it.
I feel like my thoughts on this really come down to Nintendo sort of wanting to further their sort of like direct marketing strategy, right? Especially
Yeah.
in an age where social media platforms are becoming increasingly fragmented and crazy. And, perhaps this is their way of sort of creating something that goes directly to players, completely ignoring all of that. And they actually have a history with this because the whole Nintendo Direct format, and in fact, we're using the name Direct for the DF as well, right? Uh, they were the first of these big companies to sort of like uh, go against the grain and create a program that directly targets all the consumers in a way that was different from the typical press conference that we would see at like E3 and the like, right? They developed this whole strategy, and this feels like a potential next step. I don't know if they'll be entirely successful with it, but it's almost like a miniaturized social media network with the safe Nintendo guardrails that allows people to sort of like pop in and potentially see what's happening new on Switch. And if they spin it right, perhaps it's a way to encourage customers like, oh yeah, I'm interested in seeing what's new on the Switch or the Switch 2. And they may pop it open, look on there and see if there's anything cool or interesting to find. So whether they will actually pull that off, it's not clear. But yeah, I don't know. I think that's where they're going with it.